really happy about today. And with that, maybe we can move on to our first panel, where it's a bunch of smart people. If you don't know Oz, and if you don't know Yannic, and if you don't know Ilona, you should, because they're some of the smartest people in the business. They're going to be thinking through what we are, how do you be able to get the information that is in your data sets, and how are you able to integrate them into actionable knowledge? With that, Oz is, of course, our host here at Simpson Thacher. Ilona works for Cleary, and of course, Yannic, if you don't know his YouTube channel, you should. He really goes deep dives into research and be able to figure out what is BS in the LLM research and what is actually knowledgeable. And he is one of the most knowledgeable people on the planet on that for legal. So with that, please welcome our panel.
Thank you. So when it says that there is a true rock star among us, it is Yannic. Yannic has hundreds of thousands of people follow his YouTube channel, talking geeky search things, LLMs and stuff. So, and there are really songs written about him by fans like the rest of us. So, you know, there.
I'll just add, I'm a total fangirl, Yannic. So, you know, for whatever that's worth. So welcome everyone to the first panel of today's conference. I just want to say I'm incredibly impressed and humbled that it's 9 a.m. of day 2 of the conference and we have a full room, right? Can we just get a round of applause for you guys? Thank you so much. That's amazing. I'm also incredibly privileged and humbled, truly, to be up here and to have this conversation today. I think, you know, these two, you know, you are saying that Yannic is a rock star, but you, Oz, you are a true rock star and a visionary in this space. I think all of us in this room can appreciate how much you've done for this industry and how much you have, you know, from a thought leadership perspective, from an architecture perspective, from a really sort of connector perspective, getting us all together and doing a lot of the thinking and the groundwork in terms of being where we are today. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity to moderate this discussion and to really learn about both where we've been, right? More of the history and a bit of a retrospective around search and around some of the ideas that we've had, that you've had, and also Yannic, in terms of the future, right? Where we're headed and how you're thinking about it in your journey and how you got to be where you are now. So before we get to the substance, let's cover a little bit of the fun stuff. You are both true rock stars and visionaries in this space in your own right. I would love to just learn a little bit about you in terms of your history, the way that you came to where you are now, in terms of this point in time, right, and the focus that you have. So, Yannic, maybe I'll start with you, and Oz, then we'll transition this way.
Sure, happy to. Thanks for the most glorious introduction I've ever gotten. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for taking the time and coming here. So Paulina is here with me. We have a third co-founder called Kevin. The three of us have originally been doing a PhD together in machine learning. This was during the years of like 2016 to 2020, 2021-ish. So it was a time when there was a bit of a shift in how people think about data and learning from data and so on, because all of a sudden we had techniques, neural networks that could make sense out of data in a much more human way than previously. So previously you could do statistics over things that you would have to specifically measure on data, like they call them features, right? But now you had these neural networks that by themselves were just able to kind of learn these things from the ground data up. You didn't have to do all of this work anymore, and this opened up like a lot of possibilities. And it was, at the beginning, it was just images mostly. People were working with like convolutional neural networks, looking at image analysis and so on. There's this famous like, oh, Google's AI looked at 1 million images and it learned what a cat is, or something like this. And then slowly that also came to the world of text. So we also had the great opportunity. All three co-founders, we were at Google during the PhD as like research consultants in various research teams there. And that was the time when, for example, transformers were invented at Google. Then, in my opinion, much more impactful, BERT was invented at Google, which really showed what you could do when you scale up these models. And then obviously, a couple of years later, the mainstream caught on as well with ChatGPT, so on. So this is our domain. We come from this large data, machine learning, search angle. And we've been have had the warmest welcome in the legal field. We paired up with some legal experts, and yeah, so far it's been fantastic. Thanks to people like two of you, all of you as well. I would have never thought that lawyers were so receptive. Everybody always says, well, lawyers are conservative. The legal field is so conservative. They don't like tech. They're like, computers. But it's not true. There are so many lawyers that are fascinated by this stuff and can't wait to make use of it, whatever bureaucratic hurdles and hurdles regulatory are in their way. But it's been that's mostly the biggest surprise for me so far.
I love that. And I think that's a really nice segue, Oz, into your story, because I think you were excited about a lot of this, much earlier than many of us. And so what is your story? How did you get here? How did you get excited about it earlier on? And how did you know that we would be here? Lots of questions.
So I started as a litigator in Israel, came here to do IPOs in 98. In 2000, the market died. I was put to litigation, did e-discovery. I think we didn't know to call it e-discovery at the time, we called it discovery. And I built the system and the firm thought it was great. And then in 2002, they said, we need a lawyer to run knowledge and innovation. And I said, I have an idea of how we could do search differently. And basically, search in the beginning, the world was flat. And Lexis, Westlaw, Yahoo, Lycos, all those engines said, I can get you to the place, right? The only words. And then came the e-commerce world, and they said the world has two dimensions. There is text or products, and there are people. So people like you probably want to buy this, right? And I said in a law firm, we have a third dimension. There is the text, there is the people, and there is the why. We know climate. So I found presentation from 20 years ago when I presented about the future of search. So I had to explain to the firm the idea. I said, so, you remember your young correspondence course, the 5 Ws. So we really don't care about when and where that much. Those are chronological things. Between the who, what, and why, if we combine them together, we know how to do things, right? So that's the magic. So the full satanic knowledge map looks like this. And we focus on the what, who, and why. And the what is all the text, everything that we have, emails and documents. And the who are people and entities inside the organization and outside the organization. So it's a little Mickey Mouse thing. And the why are the clients and matters. I presented this to non-lawyers, so I call it projects. And the information sits everywhere. And if we combine it together, we'll be able to get enterprise search done right? And then I think we then worked with Recomind and we said simple to access and timely and relevant and information in context. So basically, some information came from the DMS, some came from HR, some came from the CRM, some came from accounting. And when you look at the information, there is very little valuable information at the top. There's the best practices and now I notice that this is really meta information, not document information. And we've been wasting a lot of effort on everything else that only goes bigger and bigger. So when you look at, and this is the live Recomind at the time, some was manual done by the lawyer, some was metadata, information about the matter or about the people who wrote it, and some we were working with Recomind to extract 20-something years ago with all technology. So that was the presentation, that was the explanation to the firm of why we need to do that. And so just going back to, and I said, you need to decide whether you want to file for a patent and own this and do it ourselves, or whether we shouldn't. I recommend not. And managing partner said, why would we file for a patent? Why would we do it? I said, well, we could tell the world how great we are. We could block the competition from having enterprise search done right, and we could one day sell it to Microsoft. And his answer was, we can tell the world how great we are without owning the IP. We are not in the business of writing code, and we never sue another law firm. So, and why do you recommend against? I said, recommend against because it will cost us a year, time and money. So they said, so what do you need to build it? And I said, I need $1 million, 3 years, and 5 developers. And they said, you've got the 3 years. So that forced me early on to work with a vendor, right? I mean, I thought, I have this idea, I want to build it myself. And then recommend time. I knew the vendor is going to be the e-commerce company called Endeca. They did the multifaceted really well. It was clear we're going with them. And at the time, there was another company that lied to everyone and said they can do anything called autonomy. And they said they can do all of this. Like we literally asked them, we sent requirements and said A, B, C, D. A, available today. B, being developed. C, can be done. And D, don't ask, right? Those were the categories. Autonomy became A, everything. And then Recomind were like the new kid in town. We had a few partners who came from DLA Piper, I think, in San Diego. So there's this great search engine. So we brought them, and we knew that Endeca is gonna eat them alive. And Endeca choked. They didn't size it properly. It didn't work. So we get a few more months. And during this time, Jan, who introduced me to Paulina and Yannic early on, I think 6 years ago, was the CTO of Recomind, and he built it in no time. So that's how Recomind became the partner we worked with all these years. So, and it was a fun exercise of doing it community together. And I think one of the successful things about Recomind was they built early on advisory board and brought really smart people. The founding fathers I talked about yesterday. Really, you want to be in the room to learn from each other and work, and it was a very great experience for all of us. Kind of open source building.
So many lessons there, and so a few things stand out to me. So first, your ability to hone in on something that is critically important from a practical perspective, right? In the practice of law, search is foundational to everything we do. We start from precedent, right? To start from the right precedent, you need to find the right precedent. That is enterprise search. And enterprise search is so hard. It's so hard to get right. You take so much time. I remember as an associate looking for documents for such a long time, right? And now in law firms, we often have teams who search for documents because we can't, before DeepJudge, right, and other solutions, it's so tough to get right. And so that's incredibly impressive that you were able to identify that as sort of a foundational piece of the workflow process that could be augmented with tech, right, very early on. And that's number one from a practical perspective. For the founders in the room, though, your point around the advisory board, I think that's also critically important. Just that input from, leaders in the space, from the users early on, being able to adapt and to make it agile. That's, also critical. And Yannic, I want to move over to you. You are not a lawyer by practice, and you and Paulina figured out that this problem statement, similar to us, right? You figured out that this is a foundational problem statement in our industry. How did you do that? How did that come about? How did you figure that out?
We just asked. We knew that we had the capabilities of doing something kind of a bit more beyond just, look at one document or something like this. Like that's quite readily accessible even before ChatGPT. But then we knew we had expertise that allowed us to do something bigger. So we were looking, okay, can we do something on a large scale? What kind of large scale problems are there? And it became clear very quickly that, hey, we really cannot find stuff in our own data, right? Like it was crazy that people go to Google to find their own cases because they know, it's been publicly listed somewhere. They go search the entire internet, and that works better than working their own cases, right? So it was fairly quickly we focused in on this being, I'm not sure that the most urgent problem, but a problem that we felt we had a good shot at solving.
And this wasn't part of our pre-panel discussions, but I'm just going to put you on the spot for a minute. I'm sure that many of us are thinking, well, we have iManage, we have enterprise search as part of iManage. Why doesn't that work? Or why doesn't that work as well as we hoped it would? And why is it that DeepJudge can solve this problem in a way that is that level up? And I want to plug too that I love your point around searching Google for our cases, but I think it's wider than that. It's now our content too. So law firms now have content, or knowledge management content, right? Also critically important to the work that we do. It's not just about finding the document, it's finding the right data, the right knowledge that we need, right? How are you approaching it? And for the non-technically savvy among us, if you can kind of explain what it is that's, what's the differential in terms of how you're approaching it?
For us, it's just a focus on search. A DMS is first and foremost a compliance tool. It's a tool of record. It's something that you use, and maybe it's tied to billing. And then search is the box on the top left that you can search for something. But it's a different game if you actually focus on it and say, okay, finding content, and that's, I think, for us, looking at the content of stuff, like the actual what's inside of the things, finding that is something you can only do if you actually focus on it and make this your, the thing that you do, not, oh, this is side function number 11. And then beyond that, I think you have to connect data beyond just one system. iManage is always going to want to search everything in iManage, and then the other systems, they want to search everything in there, and they'll always tell you, oh, why don't you bring all this other information to us, then we can search it, right? But it's not going to happen. So by connecting different data together, you have a better search experience, you can find stuff better. And so I don't want to say, we don't want to say that don't use the searches in these tools. They're good at what they do. But it's almost like a different use case if you go beyond that.
I really like that. I also like the way that we're talking about law firm knowledge in terms of being data, right? I think that's something that we've heard resonate through the discussion, through the discussions yesterday, through the panels, right? We are now working with data. It's not just words on a page. It is data that we are reviewing, sourcing, right? Analyzing, benchmarking, and we need a way to find that data quickly. But the broader question is around data leveraging more generally, right? How have we been thinking around data leveraging in our profession? What have we thought earlier on? What has changed? And what has stood out to you in terms of where we are now? Oz, maybe I'll move to you.
So the reason we like working with DeepJudge, I mean, by the way, predictions about the future of search, you're all going to be using DeepJudge, right? I mean, this is the only game in town today that does the new Recomind of 20 years ago, and as the way we think about it, because really nobody else tried to solve this problem for legal and successfully with modern technology. So as I said in the department, documents is the least valuable part, and we are all managing all our effort around trying to profile documents, right? We put in iManage and we give it a number and we do a lot of stuff. So the better way of working is just dump it into a place that it relates to this matter, right? We know who you are, so you don't have to tell us, and we know you just need to put it in the folder and tell us which client matter number for compliance purposes, if nothing else, but also it gives us all the context we need. And then we put all the effort in profiling the matter, not the documents, right? For each client, we have several matters, we have thousands of documents and emails, and we've been putting the effort on the garbage level, right? Instead, focus on the really high level, and that's why we like DeepJudge. That's why we like Centauri and all the tools that basically try to extract from the document up to the matter level, because that's what we sell, right? We are a law firm. The product that we sell are matters, not documents, not emails. But we don't have a place to manage those or to see, right? And I always talk about when you do that right, you get the Matrix moment at the very end of the first movie, where it should have stopped in the trilogy, when all the numbers are coming down and Neo sees it in 3D, right? When we get to that, when you use your data properly, and you flow it properly, and you use the right technology, you get to see what the matter is about. And that's our goal. That's what we sell. That's what we need to manage. And then it becomes much more valuable, right? And the same goes to the people that we have. Often you look for expertise and you look for experience. So, the way we do work allocation in most law firms is by only single thing, availability, right? That's what we measure. But if we were to add to it your expertise, and what we told you need to get experience on, and what you like to do and would like to do, and who you work well with, all these things, managing the capacity in a better way. Another prediction, another plug, since it's about founders, capacity is the answer. There is a company called Capacity, UK based as well, but they are doing the same thing. They understand the complexity of the lawyer, the entity, the person. So those are the main things, that documents or the evidence, that's what comes and flows, but the people and the matters are really the important things. And when you combine the three, you get to be able to find each one of them. A person is the sum of what they've done, what they touched, what they wrote, what they said, what they researched, what they say about themselves, about the LinkedIn profile, the things, and the matter is the sum of everything else. Who worked on it, what they did, what they do it for.
I love that. I think about this all the time, right? In terms of the work that we're doing, in terms of other innovation leaders, how we're thinking about technologies and stacking them, and the mosaic of technologies that you bring in and what you build independently too. And I think about enterprise search increasingly so, right? So now moving sort of from where we were, the retrospective, to where we're going with search. I think about it less and less in terms of search, and this is in large part thanks to you and what you're doing, but more so in terms of document interactivity. Right. And Oz, to your point, in terms of standing at the end of the movie in the matrix, right, seeing everything around you and being able to harness and leverage that data and use it and apply it. That's essentially how I think about us as lawyers in an ideal state, being able to work with information. We should be able to ask questions from our documents. We should be able to have data extracted that we can benchmark, leverage, and give advice based off of, right, without hours of manual research. All of that should be accessible. And so I'm wondering about your perspective on that and how you're thinking about the future of search and the future of a lot of these tools and where we're headed. Yannic, maybe I'll turn to you.
Thanks. It's interesting because on one hand, the garbage is the garbage, right? It's like, oh, these are just the documents. But then I think, like, if you hear, okay, the matter is the important thing. Well, let's just profile matters. Let's just ask all the lawyers to always fill out these 200 fields, right? That doesn't work. Like, nobody has time for it. People don't do it. People always select the first option, the default option. And so it is through like actually looking at whatever the garbage, right? Because that's the actual work being done. That's the actual thing that is, built and produced and so on. And so we strongly believe that it has to be like a human machine collaboration. You can't ask a priori humans to fill out all of these fields about your matters, because you'll end up with wrong data. And if you need the 201st field, then you're screwed, because you can ask people to go back. Extracting using like LLMs doesn't really scale. So I don't know. We really, and obviously we come from Google, right? But we really like this approach that you just kind of search for stuff and you find this at the time when you need it, versus like going ahead and deciding which ones are the good ones, which ones are the fields, and so on, because you'll always be 2 years behind. So I think that's how we think about it. And we always want to keep the human as a central part of this process, like not black box, AI, whatever, like just keep the human in the loop, give the human the tools to access the information as quickly and precisely as possible, but let the human ultimately make these decisions.
But you can leverage, if we do the Centauri solution that does extract, it still comes into and enrich the search experience.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not either or. You could do both.
No, yeah. It's like the combination of all of it is the important part. But I would like, from our perspective, don't dismiss the garbage as garbage, right? Yeah. Because that's actually where you derive the information from.
That's what we make diamonds out of.
And Yannic, you've said before, I just want to double down on this concept because I found it really interesting, and I don't know if everyone here has heard it. The idea that, certain search engines made the design choice to organize the internet, essentially, right? To organize and group certain portions of what's being searched, and Google didn't do that, right? And it sounds like your philosophy is more of the Google philosophy. Can you just double down on that a little bit more and say kind of how you're thinking about it and what that approach is?
Yeah, the world is kind of too messy to organize fully, right? Like to sit top, and you can do stuff like you can classify, you can extract and whatnot. All of that is great, but I think every attempt so far at organizing the world, be that the internet, be that internal data and whatnot, into like this strict category, and when you search something, just follow the correct category and you'll find what you're looking for, it's you have to put in so much work that you will be doing this all day, right? So a mix of both is probably good. And when we looked at the field, we felt that this dimension of this in-time access, this, what do I need right now? Let me search for it. That was a missing piece.
I think about that when I think about organizing my emails, and I stopped filing my emails a while back, and it's been the best decision of my life. And now I just search. Outlook is not the most effective, but it's getting better. Oz, I want to turn to you and just ask the same question, right? Where are we headed now from an enterprise search perspective, or more broadly in terms of as we're thinking about technologies in our field and what you've seen and what you're seeing now? What's interesting to you?
So I would say we build our systems both for filers and for pilers. Right? I mean, the filers, the people who like to take the time and to put things in, concrete things, and maybe they don't do it for everything, but they do it for like the best of the best, right? I know I'm going to use this. This is a great example for this. And then they will take the time to either profile or create folder structure, which is another way of profiling. And then the pilers just leave it all in one place. And there are more and more pilers because search becomes stronger and because we're inundated with too much information that we don't have time to do. What we do like is, so in terms of the guiding principles, the first one is simplicity. So I agree with Yannic, it's a design decision. Having things very simple will drive adoption. Again, our biggest scarcity is our lawyers' time. Everything else we have IT time, we have money to buy things, we have technology, but we don't have the user's time, the key user's time. So how do we simplify things and ask the list of them just what we must have? So what we're trying to do is to make sure, put everything in the filing cabinet. That's what iManage is. It always has been the best filing cabinet that we know of right now, until people move to work in just the area. I mean, in terms of the user experience, when you think about it, Google Drive is way better than iManage in terms of the user experience. You come to a homepage and what you need is there. And you don't care where it's stored. It might be stored in another law firm server. It might be stored at the client server. You don't care as a user. You get to find it. And you don't have to do anything. You just hit save. If you want to give us more information, tell us what climate and number, which is what we need in a law firm. That's the only thing we need for compliance, for security, for distraction, which I don't understand why people still distract, because it's cheaper to keep everything forever and you just make it part of the relevancy algorithm. But simple user experience, and then augment it with technology to the point that technology can do. Our working assumption is anything that computers can do, computers will do. Right? So if you can enrich information and it becomes above acceptable level, it will happen to all of us, right? And we all have a system that will just hit save and it will suggest to you which climate and number. Now, we must have climate and number because without it, we don't have all the compliance that we need to do. But we don't need to ask you every time to tell me, because I probably know, right? After the third time you've done something with the same people and you reply to the same email, I know which matter it relates to. But that's the one thing I need to ask our people. So our people, when they save, tell me which climate and number. And if you want to do more, you could do more. And then put the right processes. So the main process that we all need to have is closing sets, because that's the best of the best. It takes a lot of the noise out and it gives you just the signal. That's what clients expect us to save at the end of the day. And then focus on those and extract from them from the key documents, the key information, push it up both to the profile of the user and the profile of the matter, and do it. So, and then put a great search. So I'm excited about DeepJudge because yesterday I just received access to the implementation, and it's really simple and it's really powerful. I'm sure we're going to talk about RAG in a second, but in terms of what we think the future is, you've done your search, you got your documents, and then you interact with them. And you say, based on those 17 documents, give me first draft. Tell me what's average. Tell me what's high and low. Explain to me, when are we doing high and low for this provision? When Skadden is on the other side, right? I mean, all those questions that you otherwise would ask your associate to spend a lot of time, we have to. It now comes by interacting with the system, and that's the beauty of it. So the future is bright.
The future is so bright. I know. Yeah. And that's exactly it, right? So you have this new way of interacting, you have this new way of working, and every step of the way that used to be manual, in my mind, it's a level up. So it's because I think where we have been in the manual process, it's essentially a game of chance. You most likely you'll find a document that works pretty well, right? And then from there, you will find precedents that work pretty well and are pretty relevant. And from there, you'll draft something that you can pull from and provisions that will work pretty well. But now every step of that process can be optimized with different tools, right? So search, interactivity, extraction, all of the tools we've been talking about, drafting. There is an optimization that we now have across each step of the journey. And from drawing from yesterday's discussion, right, we can now inject a more agentic process to all of that. We can automate it. So we can basically have this assistive capacity that feels really next gen. And so, Yannic, I'm wondering, you know, we mentioned RAG. Are there things that we haven't talked about yet in terms of what you're thinking about? Maybe, you know, you don't have to disclose roadmap if you don't want to, but anything that you're excited about in terms of how we're doing the work that we're doing, and especially drawing from, I'm sure, all of your experience talking to law firms, talking to leaders, right? Seeing how we are on the ground and the work that we're doing. Is there something that stands out to you about either the work that we're doing or that you think, oh, you know, this is a problem statement that search is really primed for evolving in any way that we haven't talked about just yet?
Yeah, so maybe what I would invite people to look at, when you look at search, you, like, don't just see the search bar. Like, search is not just I search for information. Search is at its core like a fundamental access to data, a precise, fast access to data, right? So you can rethink what you're doing on top of that, right? Anything that you have that needs access to data in a compliant way, in a fast way, in a precise way, and so on, especially if you don't exactly know what the data is a priori, that's a search problem, right? So it's not just the people going there typing, it's other applications, it's tools, it's agents, if you will, right? That can make use of that. So search is kind of more than just the front-end search engine. When we talk to law firms, and this is the whole world now, right? Okay, so sorry, this is the whole world. It's not just law firms, but we are in this new area of Chat GPT, right? And then nowadays, even when you say AI search, then what people immediately go, oh, you mean RAG? Oh, you mean like, ooh, I ask, ooh, please find me, or something like this, right? Like, this immediate jump to this. And so there's a lot of almost like mixing up of different things, and it's done almost a bit on purpose by certain big vendors, not saying Microsoft, but maybe Microsoft, because they want to sell you tokens. Okay, so in essence, like, there is a lot of drive to kind of confuse people about kind of what search is in this new age, right? So in essence, when we talk about retrieval augmented generation, for example, in the word itself, it's retrieval and generation, right? So an engine that gives you a RAG experience needs a retriever and it needs a generator. And what most places do, they will just slap an LLM on whatever search engine they have in place. And then they say it's AI search, right? And are you really telling me that it's better? Like, previously, I could just click on my filters, I could type my search query, I get to what I want. And now I have to argue with a thing to do it for me, right? Are you really telling me that's a improvement? Like, sometimes it's good. If you have to like actually read a lot of search results quickly, get a summary of it, like, fantastic. But it's like, people are trying to then say, oh, this is AI search. We have AI search now, right? Like, no, you just have like a middleman between you and a classic search engine. And then it goes further and they say, oh, no, we now do vector databases, right? That's AI search now, right? And it's so, I don't know, I know it's modern and like we use vectors, we use embeddings and so on, but embedding a corpus in a vector database is like second year undergrad student homework assignment, right? This is not, and then people think, okay, once I do that, all my hopes and dreams will come true because it will just magically understand me because of vectors, right? Like, this is not, so I'm really surprised to see about your presentation, Oz, because so much of what you say hasn't changed. right? It's still the same problem. You're still facing the same, like search is still absolutely the same. And just because LLMs are here and vectors are here and so on, you can make fantastic use of them, but it's not solving all problems just because you add one of those things. So, and that's, I think in our talks with firms, we almost have to anti-sell to a degree, and also be a bit more like very clear of, it's still the same problem. It's still like we have modern techniques now that are used in internet search engines that haven't arrived yet in-house, that haven't arrived yet in the corporations. But yeah, it's kind of like, don't assume this is just a solved problem just because LLMs are here.
So I love that. I think that's a really nice piece of advice and takeaway for innovation leaders and law firms and how we're thinking about it, right? As I'm going to turn to you and go on the other side of that, right? And again, not something we talked about, but I'm going to put you on the spot because I think this is interesting for the audience and balances it out. What can you share with the founders in the room, with the startups, right, who are in this space? Because on the flip side of Yannic's experience, you talk to a number of founders and startups who are working with law firms. What piece of advice would you give them in terms of how they're talking to us, and what could they be doing? What can they be focused on or explaining or working with us on?
It's a little too late. You're stuck with the legal market. I wouldn't if I had to choose my market. Like, we are slow, we're frustrating. So I wouldn't be here if I were a founder. But since you're with her here, and I think the important thing is, if you want to bring more value, think about products that bring value to the chairperson of the firm, the people who run the firm. We are one of the few industries that don't have an assembly line, right? We run matters. We put documents here, email there, time there, bills there. There is no one place to see where the matter is and how it progresses and what's a good matter and bad matter and all the decisions. So I think it's probably the next frontier also for search, is to look at the timeline of things, how they evolve over time. Here is the first draft, and here is the last draft, and here is in the middle, and here is what happened there. To tell the story and to able, so documents is part of it, but the matter is the higher level of that. And that's going to be hard, doing a basically red line every minute of how things evolve to understand what is a good associate work versus a bad associate work. So that's going to be interesting. In terms of advice to the vendors, I think really just listen. I mean, those are when I look about the successful versus those who didn't, is adapt to what the market tells you that we would like. Yes, there is some educational part that you need to explain to us, but at the end of the day, if you build products that we like and we see value in them, we will use them. And after it took you the 3 years to sell to the first law firm, it usually goes really fast after that. But most vendors, startups won't survive the 3 years.
I love the assembly line point. I think we need a Henry Ford, right, to come in and help us figure this out. I'm going to close us out, Yannic. I'm going to just ask you to tell us an anecdote about what happens when you walk into a conference of machine learning engineers who have watched your YouTube videos. Just one little story that we can, do they recognize you? Do they say anything? Do they do anything? Do you get any unrecognizable noises that are exclaimed in your direction?
Yeah, I think so it's, I said this yesterday. It's very.
I like making Yannic blush.
It's very odd to have this super niche micro fame. Very, very odd, because you can be anywhere in the world and just very normal, right? But then you walk into that one building with these, 2,000 people that came together for this 1 week, and it's like, for some reason, everybody knows you. And people want to take pictures. That's very odd, very odd. I'm extremely grateful that I get to do that. That people tell me it helps them. So I explain research papers to mostly other researchers and grad students and so on, on YouTube. So it's kind of like advanced content for researchers. It baffles me that anyone listens, but they say it helps, and I'm extremely honored I get to do that. It's
I think almost 500,000 subscribers to his YouTube channel. So.
He promised he'd be signing autographs. Half kidding, half kidding. And that closes us out. I'd love to have a question or two if there are any in the audience. Yeah.
I really liked your comments about all you need is search. Of course, Google, just search the thing. You don't need to be able to tag it up, et cetera. But even Google has a knowledge graph. That is to be able to pre-process, to be able to say, these are the triples. This person did this thing. Can you talk a little bit about the value of pre-processing and maybe that in conjunction with search?
Yeah, so we obviously make some inflammatory statement to get a discussion going, right? It's definitely valuable to pre-process, classify things and so on, like it has always been. Even Google within search does that, not just in the knowledge graph, right? So we also make use of, for example, Sally as a taxonomy to kind of pre-populate stuff about documents. And the combination is really what makes it. So you want to say, okay, I'm looking for something like this, but then within I'm looking for the specific situation that I'm in. And that specific situation, you can't count on the fact that, everyone in the past has tagged your particular field. So once you can combine the two, it's probably the best of both worlds.
And then once you've done the search, traversing the graph, would you be able to traverse the graph and be able to find things? And is that A, following things that have already been tagged? And B, is it during traversing the graph also finding new things?
I mean, so we try to tag whatever we can. So if you can then subdivide, sub-refine or something like this in terms of the graph, or followed from matter to people, from people to clients and things like this. But it's a different kind of graph, right, than the document taxonomies. But I think this linking stuff together of connections that you already know exist is very good, because that's what people do, right? You go tell them, hey, look at this client. They're going to go to the client. They're going to go to the matters. From the matters, they're going to go to the documents. So you should enable your machines to do the same. Right?
And the reason we're excited about DeepJudge is because they pre-index all your knowledge, right? Everything you have in the firm is already there when you come, as opposed to other places where you need to start by uploading and then interact.
Hi, my name is David Camion. Thanks for making search sexy again. Everybody in this room is going to be using AI-enabled search sooner or later. Could you just run down the 5 to 7 different types of results people are going to get? So there'll be some results that are purely generated without RAG at all. Damien talked about implicitly graph RAG, right? There'll be results that are just retrieved deterministically from a database. They don't go through any transformation at all, right? Date of birth, May 15th, 1967. It's not generated. It's pulled from a database. What other types of search results are we going to be experiencing in the coming years?
It's difficult to look into the future, right? I mean, in search, we mostly deal with, can we retrieve stuff, right? Like that exists. So the first line is always stuff that exists, right? Before we talk even about anything generative, and people still, like with all the talk of generative AI, people still want to actually see what exists. Like what is the document? What is the matter, the person, or something like this?
Or the clause.
Or the clause, or yeah, exactly, or something like that. So that's kind of, it's more like layers, right? The first layer is what exists, and then the second layer is, can something like, point you interactively to the things that exist. So that's typically when you like put an LLM on top and tell it, hey, look, here's a bunch of search results. Tell the user in a nice way what you found, or something like that. And then probably the third level is when you then have a more extensive, and that's when we get into agents and things like this, actually making sense of the things that have been found, right? So you have the retrieved stuff, and then you have something on top that actively tries to make sense out of it. And I think that's probably, that's a bit more future I don't know. Do you say in English? In German, we have this word called future music. No? Zukunftsmusik.
I'm going to start using that.
It's more, we're not there yet to do this robustly, right? You still want to show people what actually exists and not rely on some magical process making sense out of it. But I think it's worth start experimenting with it. And yeah, agents and workflows and processes on top of search is exactly that, is kind of like, can I make sense of it? Can I generate stuff from it? And so on. So it's like multi-layer more than
Conan.
different kinds.
This is for you, Oz. So you mentioned Recommend and autonomy, and now here are DeepJudge, but something did happen in between there, right? There was a company, Raven, purportedly AI tagging and going to solve our search problem. So what happened?
So here's my take about Raven. So autonomy, as we said, lied to everyone and promised things. And then the clients who paid a lot of money were frustrated. And they sent the post-sales engineers to basically hack the platform to do something for them. Those were the 4 founders of Raven. Those guys said, instead of doing it for the big guy, we'll do it for ourselves. We understand what we can do that works. But they were hackers in DNA. And they, instead of creating a product, created one-off solution every time. That's why they almost got bankrupt. That's why they were bought by iManage. That's what happened there.
When LLMs came along, I started to get confused about, do we need enterprise search anymore? And I feel like maybe you've already answered this, but what I see people going in to use the LLM for is to find things. So they upload a bunch of documents because they're trying to find something. And I think what you're saying is the generative part is just telling them what they found, but how good the search is and whether they found it or not is really the key to it. But I mean, some tools are using neural networks, right, to find those things. So is that significantly less effective than what DeepJudge is doing in terms of search? And yeah, I think that's my question.
It's good, great question. So I mean, this goes into technical, so LLMs essentially, they kind of know what they've been trained on, which is typically like all of the internet, and they know it in a kind of wishy-washy way, right? So they know it like the guy at the bar who claims to know everything, right? Has an opinion about everything, but not necessarily. Yeah, okay. And then they also know, quote unquote, anything that you give them, so-called in context. So anything that you provide them at runtime, which is limited. By now, we do have LLMs that go up to, like, the largest ones from Google go up to like 2 or 4 million tokens context, but it's still a limited set of things that you can tell it in its like short-term memory, so to say. How these things get there is probably the bigger point. So if you already know somewhere in these 3 documents is the thing I'm looking for, cool, like upload them to an LLM, it will tell you where stuff is. They're pretty good at that nowadays. But if the thing you're looking for is somewhere within not 3 documents, but 300 million documents, then you necessarily need a way to find the 3 documents that you then put to the LLM to ask about. Right? So, and that's where retrieval augmented generation comes in. So you need a search engine to even get the stuff to put into the LLM. And then obviously you're back at the same problem, right? If your search engine is weak, the things that you put into the LLM is weak, and the best LLM cannot give you a good answer if the stuff that you put in is not relevant, is weak. That's how you get the Stanford paper. Like, a lot of these failures are simply retrieval of stuff that is not relevant, put into the context of a good LLM. So, and then the other thing is using, how do you retrieve, right? So using, when it's like, okay, we use neural networks to retrieve, that's probably alluding to like these vector databases and so on. And these are great things that you can make use of in a search engine. But it really comes down to just taking the information retrieval field and implementing it well. Right? That means, yes, vectors and neural networks are a part of that, but that also means that more classic things like word frequencies are a part of that. That means things like recency, how fresh is the document? And then you go beyond that. You can say, oh, how is the document related to you? Has it, is it a this kind of document? Is it this? And so the search problem is almost, it's kind of disconnected from the LLM problem in that sense. If you ask what's different about us specifically, we believe we have a good implementation of the search part. among other things, making use of embeddings through neural networks. But I mean, yeah, that's
The other thing with LLM, Simpson Thacher took the position that we cannot use tools that leave our firewall. And what we like about DeepJudge, it sits inside the firewall, so it doesn't go out, and there's no fork client perspective.
And building upon what you just said, Yannic, part of what you're saying is that you need to be able to retrieve the thing that matters. And of course, that mattered a lot with context windows when they were 8K, but then they expanded to 128K. Now we have Google's Gemini with 2 million tokens. So as we expand the context windows, does the precision of the search matter less? Can we be greedier by putting more things into the context window?
You can put more things. So to a degree, you can put more stuff there. But it doesn't really it's the order of magnitude is way different. Even 2 million tokens context is going to be a couple of documents, especially if you have long documents, which is in no way comparable to the entire corpus of data that you have. Yeah. So it's, yes, for sure, bigger context means you can put more stuff, but it still matters that, if, for example, if you search anything on Google, take all the top 10, the first page of Google, if you add those tokens together, it's probably 1 million. And there's still 70 more pages of your Google search, right, that you cannot put into the LLM, even though they now have 1 million context. Sorry, did that answer the question?
It did, thank you.
Christian.
Yeah, thanks. Really interesting discussion. In this brave new world of search, I'm curious, what role do you see curation playing? Because not all data is created equal. As you alluded to, making use of closing sets, which is great if what you're trying to understand is like the final negotiated position. But the example I always give as a former M&A lawyer is when I'm doing precedent searching, it's in a context where I'm creating a document or marking up a document. I only want to search the seller-friendly first drafts, and not all drafts are created equally. So I've heard great things about DeepJudge, and I love the vision, but I'm always really interested with the algorithmic solutions. How do you start to layer in the curation that's essential to the practice context? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, so that's context, right, at your search, and that's what we do envision. And that's why I talk about the timeline is really part of understanding timeline of things, beginning and end, and understanding the bargaining power. So you would like to say, give me a pro-seller, right, first draft of a merger agreements where a German pharmaceutical company buys, right? So you want to be able to use that context as much to feed your search and to drive the relevancy of what you get. And we're getting there. Right? I mean, that's the direction we're going, and how we're going to do it, it's that's guy.
We have time for one more question. Who has another question?
I mean, we're not all doing all of that.
Yet.
But so maybe yet. So I think that's where you can see really systems playing together, right? So I think also none of these things are exclusive, right? I think last year was so fun because everyone was just out to buy one AI. Like we talked to committees. We're just like, we're looking at all the AI and we're buying one. How are you better than
we all feel
that
so
one?
seen. Oh my God.
But now I think people recognize you can actually put these systems together. So you can put systems that profile, documents automatically for very specific things, right? Together with human curated stuff, right? Humans annotating stuff. The lawyers themselves, maybe if they're in the mood, filling out something beyond the client matter. You can put all of this together. So it's more like an ecosystem of things that start working together. And I think people slowly also appreciating that.
I'll take privilege as the last question. As somebody who's become micro-famous by reading the latest research of the bleeding edge technologies, we all know that this is going at a dizzying pace for anyone. So as you at the forefront of that dizzying pace, what are you most excited about that you're seeing coming in the research that might be able to help all of us here?
I mean, in the short future, you're probably no longer going to be able to distinguish kind of what's real and what isn't. I'm not sure how that's going to help you. But it's fun to think about. it's fun to think about what it means for the legal profession, right? If like essentially any natural signal, and we do consider kind of text but made by humans also as a natural signal, can and will be able to be reproduced at least kind of locally, looking very real, right? So that's what I mean, no longer be able to distinguish real from generated. So the two questions to ask are like, first, does it matter? Like, when does it matter? And second of all, what's then the actual thing left? And the actual thing left, we believe, is to like ask what do the lawyers do that actually provides value? Is it really writing the documents? Then you're probably in a losing business. So if you can actually use these tools to enable them to do the stuff that are most likely not going to be taken over by machines anytime soon, which is they are consultants, they are strategists, they are advisors to their clients. And yeah, at the end of the day, they write a document. But so I think it forces people much more to think about that dimension and what actual value creation is and what makes a top law firm, because everyone's going to have access to the same LLMs, right? But only you have access to your people and the collection of data that your past people have created. So
Here.
yeah.
Amen. Beautifully said.